In 1968's X-Men 51, we meet Eric the Red, a potential ally to Magneto. Issue 52 reveals this is Cyclops in disguise. If you ask where did Cyclops get this costume, how is he able to fire energy beams from his hands, well, that's typical nonsensical Silver Age X-Men. Best not to think too much about it. This would be fine, except X-Men 97 introduces Eric the Red for real, this time a Shi'ar agent working for Emperor Dakin, as we find out in X-Men 107. How did Cyclops somehow predict there was another guy wearing the same costume and name? We find out in X-Men Deadly Genesis 6, Gabriel Summers, Cyclops' younger brother, was artificially aged and sent back to Earth to be a slave working for Eric the Red. We don't know how long Eric the Red was on Earth, but what if he somehow found out his slave was a mutant? While Gabriel was captive by the Shi'ar, the only flare-up of his abilities we're aware of happened on the day of his escape. But what if he had some prior, less explosive indication he was a mutant? Something subtle enough Gabriel didn't even realize. Or the Shi'ar have a way of tracking mutants. If Eric the Red was able to find out who this kid's parents were, maybe not so difficult, Christopher Summers was still alive, left to be broken by slavery back in the heart of the Empire, it wouldn't take much for Eric the Red to see if there was any other mutants who might be useful to the Empire. We may have to fudge the timeline a little. Gabriel escaped from the Shi'ar and spent a year on the run before Moira McTaggart got a hold of him. And then he spent an undisclosed amount of time training with her before he and her other charges were sent to rescue the original X-Men circa giant-size X-Men 1. But a year in comic book time could reach back to before Scott was with Xavier, though that might be a stretch. But it could work if Eric the Red figured out Gabriel was a mutant a good while before Gabriel escaped. I know this is a lot of what-ifs for you to endure, but what if Eric the Red sought out Scott Summers and attacked him at the orphanage he lived at to test if he could be useful? Maybe Scott's inability to control his power meant he was useless to the Empire. Eric the Red is somehow able to mind control Havoc and Polaris, so maybe he can wipe Scott's memories to cover his tracks. Even a kid screaming about aliens might draw undue attention. Or X-Factor 39 tells us Mr. Sinister is able to block conscious memories, so mayhap he erased Scott's memories as they might mess up whatever machinations he had in mind for Scott. This might explain how Adam X the Extreme floated onto Sinister's radar in X-Men Legends 2, because Sinister was already aware of the Shi'ar. Scott was able to break Sinister's mental conditioning in X-Factor 39, so maybe he unintentionally remembered Eric the Red, but couldn't quite remember who he was. Maybe he just made that image up. Still doesn't explain how he got this costume, but maybe it explains everything else. This might explain why Eric the Red chose Havoc and Polaris as agents, because he had looked into Havoc years earlier. Cyclops might have proved too volatile to try to use, but his brother didn't have that same lack of control. Maybe Eric didn't poach Havoc earlier because Sinister was aware of his presence by then, and these two were playing a sort of Cold War against each other for years. Like my least favorite fan theories, I have no hard evidence to support this, as Eric the Red hasn't been in that many comics, so there's not a lot to support any theory, but there's nothing to contradict this either. What do you think? Let me know, and I'll be back in the future with something else. Until then, have a good one.